Disney is a company known to give more than just the typical theme park attraction. They give immersive experiences that make us really feel like we're in the world that they're trying to make us feel like we're in. Whether it's a movie or an original idea, Disney does all they can to make sure that the guests feel fully immersed. However, here recently in the past couple years, there's been a mix of attractions that fans haven't really been so keen on. Now, some attractions are still, kind of reminiscent of the greats back in the day that really do make fans fall in love with them. Whereas now, a lot of the attractions in recent years aren't really as great. So in today's video, we'll be going through the best and the worst of the modern day Disney attractions. Now, we're only going to be staying in the US parks today, but I do have another video planned for the Tokyo Disney Park in just a few weeks. But without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So we're only going to be doing the two worst and best because we all know how long Disney takes to build their newer attractions, and so we don't really have that much to work with here. But anyways, in the number 2 spot for the worst, we are going with Spider-Man Web Slingers at Disney's California Adventure. Now, there has already been a lot said about this ride. I remember I made a comment on my other channel, like whenever the ride first opened, that this ride just does not feel like it's Disney quality, and I kind of still stand by that. Having to rewatch this video to make this video, I just feel like this ride is honestly just kind of not only bland, but also just cringy in so many ways. That could just be me, but I do know that a lot of people have felt that way about the MCU in general, and so having a ride based off the MCU, at least we know that they are bringing the same kind of energy to the attraction, the same kind of humor at least. But with that being said, it just doesn't flow well with an attraction. And honestly, the main issue that I feel like I have after doing like a rewatch of the attraction is kind of the narration of this. I know some people had an issue with like how Dinosaur and Animal Kingdom had like that cheesy narration. Well, this ride kind of falls under the same failure of just having this really cheesy narration from the like AI voice or something. I think the main issue is that the AI voice kind of sounds a little bit too human sometimes, and it kind of just throws things off for me personally, at least. But of course, that's not the only issue with the attraction. The main issue being that it just kind of feels lazy for a Spider-Man attraction. You would think that they would have a lot more to work with here. I mean, Spider-Man has a lot of great villains, and I feel like they could have easily done an attraction based off Mysterio versus Spider-Man, putting you in like Far From Home, specifically that film, or maybe just like a battle between them. Disney is known to do a lot of optical illusions with their attractions. Haunted Mansion, case in point, that was like 1960s, right? And that has a lot of illusions for its time. And now I'm sure they can do a lot of the same things. Well, I feel like it would have been really cool if they would have used the type of projection mapping like they do with Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, which we get into later in this video, on this attraction, but with like Mysterio. You know how Mysterio can kind of like change the reality of someone's like vision? I feel like that's what they could have done with this ride, and that would have made it so cool. But instead, we kind of just get this sort of video game-esque attraction. This feels like that Justice League ride at a Six Flags. All those Six Flags parks that have these Justice League rides in like the Hall of Justice? That's what it feels like. And honestly, even though the story of the ride itself isn't the greatest, I feel like it could have been passable if they would have just done like more physical sets, I suppose. Like even the Justice League ride, like I was just mentioning, has actual animatronics, and like it looks like you're going through like Gotham City or Metropolis or whatever. This just is just a bunch of screens. Like you can literally see like the screen doors opening up, and it feels like a Midway Mania basically, but just with Spider-Man. And I feel like having a superhero attraction needs to be a bit more thrilling and more eye-catching, because Toy Story is Toy Story, it's supposed to be kind of fun and for like, kids and families and such things, and Spider-Man can do that too, but I just feel like Spider-Man and any kind of other superhero attraction needs to kind of have some kind of epicness to it. I mean, Guardians of the Galaxy is like right down the street from this attraction, and that ride is pretty epic, I guess you can call it. I mean, it has thrills, it has animatronics, it has cool lighting effects. That's what you want in a superhero attraction. And then you kind of go here and it's just a big downgrade considering the fact that this is like built from the ground up. So, I mean, yeah, it kind of does, suck in some ways that they couldn't do more with this. I appreciate where they were going with it though, having this like new story for Spider-Man, even though I do think having the villain still would have been a bit better. I do appreciate that they, put some kind of thought into it. However, at the same time, it kind of is annoying because they're just doing that to market the merchandise in a lot of ways. But yeah, unfortunately, this is kind of what we're stuck with, and I'm sure it's grown on some people. Unfortunately, it hasn't really grown on me, and it kind of just makes me a bit more upset with the ride overall the more I watch it. But yeah, that's Web Slingers for us. Honestly, I don't really know how Disney thought this was kind of a good idea to do an attraction like this whenever we literally have this marvel of an attraction, no pun intended, right down at Universal Studios. I mean, this ride has so many effects in it. Like, watch this effect right here where the flame, like, it just goes right in your face. You can feel the heat and everything. It's kind of an intense moment because you don't expect it. It makes some people jump even. That's a really good effect. And this ride in general is just covered a bunch of effects. And like I said, it has the villains in it. A big part about superheroes, what makes superheroes so popular, is the villains that they go against. And for Spider-Man web slingers to have no villains and just have these like little cheap robots, it kind of is disappointing in some ways. Like we want to see the villains in it. Even Guardians of the Galaxy has the Collector, which even though he's not like a straight up villain, he still is an antagonist and a character, a part of the MCU. Spider-Man has a lot of potential, but unfortunately Disney just kind of cheaped out on it. Now for the number 2 best, we have Tron Light Cycle Run. This is one of the newer attractions at Disney World, and luckily I was able to ride it this past winter, and it was a night ride too. And let me just say, man, this thing is incredible. The videos do not do this ride justice. If you're judging it just based off the video, then I'd recommend, if you can, to go and ride it for yourself, because this ride is truly a thrilling experience and just everything about it is just amazing. The main thing that I think really makes this ride incredible is the presentation of it. As soon as you walk up to just the giant building and you see, like the grid itself kind of like lighting its way through the building, along with like the amazing soundtrack of Tron, it just really adds this whole immersive environment before you even get onto the ride. And I love the fact that the motorcycle itself, the light cycle, sorry, is like running right by you as you're kind of like outside waiting to go in. It's just so cool. And the pre-show itself is awesome. I love how it kind of sends you into the grid and then like you see the train actually go by. Again, just wonderfully done. Now, I get that this is kind of a copy and paste, so it's not like the newest Disney attraction, and it's not only in the USA, but this is still kind of an example of what modern Disney can do. That they take an average roller coaster, something that honestly you can kind of find this type of roller coaster at like SeaWorld with the little jet ski type roller coasters, but they make it into like this awesome Tron looking coaster with like you racing the orange team, and it just looks phenomenal. And the story itself is simple, but it works for a roller coaster. You're just racing against the other team, and it comes from the film, and everybody loves it. And not to mention, it's a super thrilling coaster. Also, I was not expecting it to be as fast as it was. Maybe it was because it was nighttime, I don't know, but it's a very thrilling coaster overall. And just this shows what modern Disney could be like if they don't cheap out on anything. And I do get it is kind of a quick and fast coaster in a lot of ways, and they also took a long time for construction with it, but just leaving that all to the side, being a ride itself from Disney, a company that we know can do really great things, it's a really fantastic ride. And I think Tron is just an IP ride where they really did use it to its full potential, which is kind of what us fans want with IP based rides. It's just that they use it to its full potential and do it in the right way. Speaking of IPs with lots of potential, we have the newest Disney attraction opening in Walt Disney World and Disneyland, Tiana's Bayou Adventure. Unfortunately, this is going into my number 1 worst spot. Now, I personally think as rides go, Web Slingers is worse than this, but the reason why I'm giving this one the number 1 in the worst spot is not only because it's newer, so the technology should be just a bit more advanced, but it's just also like they kind of cheated out in this ride in many ways. First of all, they already had like the entire show building and track layout and ride system already in place being Splash Mountain, and they kind of just threw some things in there. This was more lazy than Web Slingers was, in my opinion. Now, as far as the visuals of this attraction goes, no one can deny that the visuals are visually pleasing and kind of stunning in some regards. The outside of Tiana's does look nice in some way. I do personally think it's a little bit too much grass and too much purple at night, but either way, it looks nice, and I feel like in like another spot in the park, it could have looked a bit nicer. But with that being said, there is one major flaw with this attraction, and that is the story. Not just the story itself, but the way the story is executed throughout the attraction. Basically, if you don't know, the story is that Tiana's is throwing a Mardi Gras kind of party thing in New Orleans, and she's looking for musicians. And basically, you are in your little log helping her and Louis the alligator find musicians for her party. That's what the story is. Now, I think at the start of the ride, the story actually kind of gets across decently. Tiana is there at the lift hill kind of explaining to you what you should be doing, and you go and then you actually, you see the critters, and they're all playing Going Down the Bayou, and the animatronics themselves look pretty good in my opinion. Of course they do. It's modern day Disney. The animatronics are always going to look good from them. And then that's kind of just it though, nothing else really stands out to the story besides like those 5 minutes that you're looking for the critters to play the music. A lot of it is just blank space, and I even see a lot of videos on YouTube of people kind of just clipping out scenes from the ride that don't have anything in them, just so that people don't, I guess, get off that video because the ride itself is kind of boring. And that is just another big main issue of this attraction, is the fact that a lot of these scenes are just kind of blank and boring. The scene that kind of makes me, I guess, cringe the most with this ride, and just makes me feel uncomfortable in general, is the scene where Tiana is sort of just like staring at you right here, and it just makes me so angry. Like, what exactly were they thinking about doing this whole section? You have this super long piece of just straight, river, I guess, or straight track, whatever you want to call it, and this Tiana animatronic, it just isn't doing anything. She's just sitting there, and it's kind of, eerie in some ways and stuff, and then she just randomly starts talking whenever you get closer to her. It's just so weird and unnatural, unlike how Splash Mountain was, whenever you would look around you and there would be things to look at all around. The story was progressing every single moment. From here, you get shrunken down by Mama Odie, and this part, while I think it would have been cool in a different kind of context to get shrunken down, having some kind of magical element to the ride, because it is Princess and the Frog after all, it just doesn't help or pertain to the story whatsoever. Why are you shrunken down? Is it just one of her tricks or something? Like, I don't know. She's not even like a bad guy in the film, so I don't know why she'd be shrinking you down. Maybe it's to look for smaller musicians. I think that's kind of what they're trying to portray, but honestly, I don't think anybody gets that from the attraction. Even me, like, knowing what the story is, I only know what the story is just because I read about it. If I were to watch this video without knowing any other context, I wouldn't know at all what the story is. So that's just the main issue with this attraction, that it's kind of bland. There's a lot of space that just isn't being used, and I feel like that is a huge missed potential. If I were the one kind of like over this attraction, and I'm sure many other people would agree here, I would have just based it off the movie, added the villain in some kind of context, because honestly, the villain, Dr. Facilier, he's kind of what makes Princess and the Frog as popular as it is, at least in my opinion. His song, the way he moves, I guess, and like his just whole voodoo style of him is what makes it popular, and I feel like that's what most people were excited for, because imagine just going up that hill and down the drop with him in it. That would be really scary and really intimidating, and just really add a sense of risk to it, which unfortunately this ride is something that has nothing of at all. For the number one best, I have to give it to Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway at both Disneyland and Disney World. Specifically the Disneyland version, however, because the queue line to this ride is amazing. Going through this old theater, kind of seeing the history of Mickey Mouse and being in the sets of every one of his films and shorts is just such an incredible idea, and it's kind of nostalgic for a lot of people, myself included. And it really does scream like a Mickey Mouse attraction. Even though the Florida one is still great with the queue line, I think Disneyland definitely takes it for the queue line and the ride experience overall. Basically, Mickey's Runaway Railway is you going into the cartoon itself of like the Mickey Mouse cartoons, and you're just trying to help Mickey and Minnie catch the runaway train. Now, I'll be doing a more in-depth video using this attraction in it as an example, so I'm not really going to talk too much in-depth about it in today's video, but I will be talking about the things that I think make this the best attraction in modern-day Disney. Firstly, it uses the iconic characters of Mickey Mouse. We have not seen a Mickey Mouse-based attraction, and honestly, I don't think even forever, to be honest. I think this might be the actually first attraction, surprisingly, and it just now opened in 2021, and they did a really good job with it. They used actual animatronics, and the set pieces and the projection mapping just look amazing. It's a good way of using screens. It doesn't look like a screen because you're being surrounded by it, and there's also set pieces in the middle of it that kind of bring the screen into the actual, like reality. And I think it's just beautifully done. Every set looks amazing. It's goofy, it's silly in all the right ways. And I just think the story in general is, it's so just like silly, like a Mickey Mouse cartoon basically. Not only that, but it has an amazing soundtrack also, which we'll be getting into in that other video I was just talking about. But also, the story of this attraction just progresses along very good. Like, the pacing of this ride is very good. The entire ride it's not really very thrilling, but it just tells a very fun story basically too, and you have all these different elements and scenarios going on that you would see like an old Mickey Mouse cartoon, and it just has a very good pace to it that doesn't really make you bored. It doesn't be like, okay, what's gonna go on next. It doesn't drag or anything like that like Tiana's does. It literally keeps on going. It feels like you're in an actual cartoon where nothing just stops. It's just all crazy maniacal, I guess, kind of scenarios going on. But yeah, this ride honestly does everything right. Down from the train vehicles to the soundtrack to the animatronics and the set pieces. it's honestly just a marvel of an attraction, and I really hope Disney continues to make more stuff like this and more stuff based off the iconic Disney characters. I would love to see like a DuckTales themed ride in the future or something, because I think, being such big parts of Disney, they need to be more than just mascot characters walking around. There needs to be like attractions based off of these characters, and I feel like Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway is definitely a good place to start with that. Anyways, guys, tell me down in the comments below, what is your top 2 best and worst Disney attractions of the modern day from like the past 5 to 7 years or so. I hope you enjoyed this video. Tell me down in the comments below what do you think, and I'll see you guys in the next one.